Hello, good morning and welcome to this week's Friday Facebook Live. And I am talking this week about the second in the series of blogs that I've been doing, which is focused on keeping children out of conflict. And this week I have been talking in the blog about what to do when you feel that you're really not on the same page as your partner or your ex-partner. And that's something that I just wanted to talk a little bit about before I come on to what do you do about that. And I think it's worth going over the kind of situations that can give rise to this, because I know that certainly from clients I see in mediation, it's really not unusual for each discussion to take on a kind of whole world of extra significance. So effectively, when you're talking about household chores or childcare or who does the run to football or to gymnastics or anything else, it suddenly becomes about so much more than that. And it can be for a variety of reasons, but it's usually always related to the kind of emotional triggers. So where one person has made the decision that they feel the relationship is at an end, it can mean that there is resentment. And that can be for both parties. It can be resentment of the person who's had to come to terms with the decision that's been made by the other person. But there can also be resentment, I think, from the person that's made the decision, that they were put in a situation where they felt they had no choice but to make that decision. And that resentment kind of simmers, and there's also anger. And because you feel angry towards your partner, your ex-partner, all of the time, any conversation just rubs you up the wrong way and kind of exacerbates the feelings you have, and it can trigger all of the feelings that you've got about why you've ended up having to end the relationship or why the relationship has been ended for you. And I also think there can be a huge amount of fear when you're facing the fact that your relationship has broken down, whether that's because you made the decision or somebody else made that decision for you. There can be so many fears about the future, practical things about how you're going to manage with money, about where you're going to live. But there can also be a lot of fears about what life is going to be like for you on your own. How are you going to cope with being at a home on your own with not having people around? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be lonely? How are you going to fill up the time? And I think particularly where you've got children, facing the fact that there are going to be nights where your children are not going to be with you because they're going to be with the other person. And that's a very, very big adjustment. When you've been in a situation where even where you've got home and the children have been in bed, you've always been able to kind of go in, look at them, kiss them goodnight. Coming back to an empty house without children in it can be a very big adjustment. And I think it's something that sometimes people underestimate the huge significance of that. I also think that hurt plays a big part. There can be hurt where you feel that the other person has hurt you. There can also be hurt and feelings around things that have happened to you previously in your life that are reawoken by the breakdown of the relationship. It can trigger all kinds of feelings that you may have thought you'd left behind, or from other events that perhaps haven't been dealt with as much as you perhaps thought they had. So when you've got that kind of simmering kettle of emotions, and any conversation can trigger the whole kind of baggage of why you feel the way you feel and how you feel about your partner, then it's no wonder that even trying to talk about even the small things can lead to a huge argument. And very quickly you can feel that you're not on the same page, that you can't even talk to each other about simple things, that every kind of conversation ends up being an argument, and it often defaults to the same things. And certainly when I have looked at talks by therapists or other people that work with couples going through issues in their relationship, there's a lot of talk that most couples have the same argument over and over again. And even if you're in a relationship that you think of as being broadly happy and you're not contemplating a relationship, often when arguments start, they can end up being about the same thing. And when you separate, the same situation can carry on, but you can then add in a whole other host of emotions to that because of the fact that the relationship is ending, and because of that there are decisions that you need to make about splitting up money and about where children will live when they'll be with mum and when they'll be with dad, and all of those kind of things. It can also be a time where you don't feel very good in yourself. It can be really challenging trying to deal with a separation and all the emotions, and that can mean that you feel run down, lacking in energy. It can also mean that you have problems sleeping, and I think most of us know that when you haven't slept, even your ability to deal with things that you'd normally take in your stride, children having a meltdown over breakfast or different issues, things like that can really be even harder, and your ability to cope with things and process things can often be compromised by sleep issues as well. So all of these things thrown into the mix can mean that it really is very difficult when you're in the immediate throes of a separation to try to talk about anything that might be sort of to do with going forward. And that can be sort of short-term things such as, are we both going to stay living under the same roof until we have sorted things out? How are we going to arrange paying the bills and things like that? Are we going to stay with the arrangements that we've always used going forwards, or is there a reason why we might need to change those? Sometimes if one person moves out, there needs to be a bit of a rejig of financial arrangements because of the fact that you've then got another home to pay for and to meet the bills on. There can also be other discussions about how you tell your children, when you tell your children. And if you feel that you can't even have a conversation without it ending in an argument, then it's very difficult to manage those immediate sort of issues surrounding separation and to try to make a plan as to how you move forward. One of the things that I've talked about a lot and one of the things that I talk about in pretty much all my initial meetings, is that when a couple separate, often both parties are at very different points. One person may already be sort of 1 foot in the new life, wanting to sort things out, and the other person may be very shocked and very devastated for a period of time before they can actually feel that they're processing the separation. And that in itself can make things more difficult, because you can have one person who's, please, can we sort this out? I've been to see a lawyer, I want to do this. And the other person is still very much in shock and unable to do things. And that can lead to an extra problem with trying to sort things out, because you're both in a very different place. And it means one person becomes frustrated with the other person's inability to deal with things because they're not in that place. And the other person feels that they're being pressured and that, it's all getting too much with having to face up to things and trying to make decisions that they're not ready to face. So again, that can be another problem with trying to talk about things. So what do you do when you feel that you're in that situation and you just can't talk about things without it ending in a row or a disagreement, or you're both feeling resentful of each other? The first thing I would say is time. Do you both just need a little bit of time and space to deal with the emotions that you're going through and to try to process those a bit more so that you can then come together and start to talk about things? It may be, as I've just alluded to, that only one person needs more time, and that can be frustrating if you're the person that really wants to get going with sorting things out and you really feel that you need to physically separate for you both to feel better. But sometimes leaving things for a few weeks, a couple of months, maybe slightly longer, can mean that then when you come together you are able to sort things out much more easily, and so the overall time it takes you to sort things out is going to be the same, but it's just that instead of having 7 months of a constant battle or a year of a constant battle, actually you have a few months where you're just trying to let each other breathe and deal with the situation, and then you have a period of time where you can join together and sort things out. So time can be a huge factor. Secondly, divorce and separation is one of the most stressful life events that anybody goes through, and there is a reason why people struggle to cope with that. Everybody has the limit of what they can cope with, and it's different for everybody. But when you're going through one of the most stressful life events, that may be a time where you struggle to cope with things. Maybe you can't manage your emotions, they just keep spilling out of you because you feel so angry or so fearful or so hurt and upset. And if you're in a situation where any discussion results in this huge overspilling of emotions, then that is going to be a reason why you can't have sensible conversations together to decide on a way forward. And if that's happening for you and you feel that a bit of time isn't really helping, then it may be time to get some help with dealing with things. And sometimes there can be a sense of stigma or shame for people, but I really feel that there shouldn't be. It is a fact that everybody has a limit of what they can cope with, and going through one of the most stressful life events is a reason why you maybe just need a bit of extra help to keep your head above water. Especially so if you're dealing with other stressful things at the same time, such as a family member being ill, or a bereavement, or a redundancy, or something like that, or concerns about your children. That's when talking to your GP may be helpful. They can talk you through the different options of support that you could access, or seeing someone like a counsellor or a therapist so that you have a safe space with a trained professional where you can really offload the things that you're feeling and get some help with finding a way forward with managing your emotions and just helping yourself feel a little bit better. I know people often worry if there's costs involved, but sometimes paying the right professional at the right time can save you money because of the fact that you're getting the right help to deal with what's happening to you at this moment, and then that saves you being in a space where you really can't talk to each other and things deteriorate so badly that you end up having a huge court battle about things where you spend thousands of pounds on legal fees. Often spending a few £100s on some therapy at the front of things can mean that things settle down for both of you, and you're then able to find a way forward together in a much more constructive way, which can save you costs. So I would certainly say that that's something to think about, and a conversation with your doctor is always going to be free because of our wonderful NHS, and that means that you can just find out about the options in your area as to what you can access through the NHS. The other thing is finding the right professional support to help you manage your divorce or separation. I think it's fair to say that lawyers have had quite a bashing in terms of their public profile in recent times and probably before that. And I think sometimes that's very much unjustified. There are an awful lot of lawyers who work with couples who are separating who have a really constructive approach that emphasises dealing with matters in a amicable way and putting the needs of children at the front of what you're doing. And there's an organisation called Resolution who represent family lawyers and mediators and other professionals like financial planners and therapists who work with couples and individuals who are separating. And they have a specific code of conduct that members sign up to that is about being constructive and is about putting the needs of children first. And their website, resolution.org.uk, is where you can find a lawyer that's local to you that subscribes to that code. So getting some advice from a lawyer who is of that mind and who will advise you to deal with things in a cost-effective and constructive way may be helpful in understanding where you stand so that you're dealing with things in a realistic way and you're not kind of hanging your hopes on something that is not workable or not realistic. Because if you and your child's other parent are falling out because one of you has unrealistic expectations, then that's something that's going to impact on your children, and ultimately it's something that's not set in reality because one of you's hoping to achieve something that is not going to happen and can't happen because it's either financially unworkable or it's not something that is legally workable in terms of the kind of arrangements you want to put into place, or because you haven't properly understood what the kind of implications are of what you're talking about. So it's really important that you both have realistic expectations, and a good constructive lawyer can advise you about those. I'm duty bound, of course, to also talk about family mediation, which, as you know, is my huge passion. Family mediation brings both of you together in a supportive and safe space where you can talk about what happens next. And the mediator can help to make sure that your discussions are constructive and are kept on track, because sometimes when you're feeling really emotional, you can sort of and another thing and keep pinging off like that, whereas a mediator will ensure that you are keeping your discussions on track and sorting out a particular issue before you then move to sorting out another issue. The mediator can also make sure that you are working with correct information. They can explain different processes to you, and they can make sure that you have understood what happens next, so that what feels like a huge sort of mess or mass of things can be pulled out. So you pull out the different strands and you then have a step-by-step guide to how you're going to move forward and work with that. And that can often make things feel a lot less overwhelming, because you are breaking things down and not trying to deal with too much in one go. So I definitely think getting the right support is something that is a really crucial part of sorting out things when you're just not on the same page. I know that there are cost implications of instructing the right professional, but a lot of people are putting together resources to help couples who are separating, and a lot of information is available online. If you look at, for example, the blog that I write on our website, there's lots of practical guidance in that, and I know that other mediators and lawyers do similar things, so you can hopefully find information to guide you. Family mediation is usually the cheapest way of resolving things, and you can often do a lot of the legwork yourselves between sessions, so that you're moving things forward between sessions and just using the mediator to guide you with information and with a set structure, so that you can then move things forward yourself. And again, that can be really helpful if you are worried about costs and you want to try and keep things as cost effective as you can. I hope that that has been helpful in talking more about this blog and what to do when you are not on the same page and you're worried that that is really spilling over and pulling your children into the conflict between the two of you, which really can be something that happens very easily, because when you both feel stuck and you both feel that you're in limbo and you're not moving forward, you know, that's a desperate situation to be in, and it spills over into everything. And it's really hard to kind of not let your children pick up on that, because as I talked about last week and in the last blog, children really do pick up on more than we ever think. As always, if you would like to get information from me and all of our free resources and tips and guidance, then you can sign up to our free mailing list if you're going through a separation or you're trying to support a friend or family member that's going through a separation. And you can do that via bit.ly/LKW list. And if you're a professional that's watching this, I have a networking event next week for anyone who works with couples who are separating or individuals. There are still spaces available, but I would suggest that you sign up today, because I'm going to be closing it on Monday morning. And if you go to my website, lkwfamilymediation.co.uk, you'll see that there's a link for the 2019 online training programme, and through that you'll find a link to book the networking. I hope that this has been helpful this morning. I also forgot to apologise that this is a slightly different video angle, because I'm doing this on my phone this morning for reasons that I won't bore you with now. I hope that everybody has a good weekend. Please join me next week for our next Facebook Live. This may be at a slightly later time, but I will confirm that next week. And in the meantime, as I say, please have a good weekend. Take care.